Star Trek, the next generation. Your love throughout the nation. You're my favourite show. Was in every episode you're lucky. You don't have to wait for buses. You just step into the transporter and off you boldly go. Mr. Wall's my favourite person.
Welcome to the bOrgCast. We are the Org. And our purpose is to assimilate seasons 2 to 7 of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Hello, friend!
Hello!
We return with Season 4!
Woohoo!
Woo! We have Best of Both Worlds Part 2!
Wow.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation. You once knew him as Picard, captain of the Starship Enterprise, but now he's half man, half machine, a deadly pawn of the evil Borg. His mission to destroy Earth and anything or anyone who gets in his way. It's the showdown of the 24th century on the next exciting episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
So, I don't know what happened to Trailer Man. The excitement clearly got to him or something, and he exploded in a cloud of squee, as you would. So we get a rather more professional-sounding Trailer Man for a change. Although he does seem to be under the misapprehension that this is a horror film.
Well, it's got horror aspects, isn't it? I mean, the Borg are quite
But the music
horrifying.
they use is like, that's something...
From Alien or something.
No,
yeah.
it sounded like something from Halloween. It was like weird.
Oh.
He's a man on a mission to take revenge. Yeah, very cool. I shall hand over to you.
Okay. So first of all, for the first part of the teaser, we have a reprise. And then it says, and now the continuation, which I've always found annoying. Just the continuation. You can say the rest of it, or... that phrase...
Continued.
Yes, that phrase just pisses me off. Anyway, so they're firing the deflector weapon, and it does bugger all.
No.
And the reason, of course, it does bugger all is because Picard knew about it. And anything that Picard knew, that knowledge is now with the Borg. And you get him explaining this as Locutus to Riker, and it's really creepy.
They couldn't have adapted that quickly. The knowledge and experience of the human, Picard, is part of us now. It has prepared us for all possible courses of action. Your resistance is hopeless. Number 1.
That really creeped me out, actually. It was really sinister. And then after the teaser, the Federation are heading towards 359, which we already knew. And as well as the Federation, the Klingons are on board, and they've opened communications with the Romulans in the hopes of getting them engaged as well, which of course foreshadows the Dominion War.
It does, doesn't it? Yes.
In Deep Space Nine.
It's a fake!
We hear that clip a lot.
Yeah, it is good though. Mm-hmm. And then you have this conversation where Creepy Admiral is saying that no, Picard is not helping the Borg, he's not assisting the Borg, they've got his knowledge, but Picard is lost. And so Riker gets a battlefield promotion to captain. Then you have this shot of Picard laid out on a slab, and there's all these creepy probes and something that looks like it's going in his eye and augments, and he sticks his arm out and they put a thingy on it, and it really is creepy.
It's very effective the way it goes black and white.
Yeah.
Which they did very, very simply. They literally turned the colour down.
Yeah.
Because the colour elements, which are his laser and
there's
the
green,
beam,
isn't
the green
there?
beam, they overlaid that. So what you're effectively seeing is a black and white picture, but with a bit of colour overlaid. But it's really, really effective. I remember when I first saw that. It
is.
And it's
creepy.
kind of heart-rending, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they zoom in and you can see a single tear, which reminded me of the episode Sarek.
Yes.
And to me, gave me hope that Picard is still in there because of the tear. Because, of course, like Vulcans aren't supposed to feel emotions, neither are Borg. So although it's really moving and creepy, at the same time, for me, that was a sign of hope. Then you get this conversation in the turbo lift between Worf and Riker, and it's kind of a throwaway line, but I kind of quite like it, which is where Wesley Crusher has suggested a chip that will automatically randomise the settings of phasers, and they're just talking about the things that they have to offer. And although it's only a throwaway line, and later on you get Barclay named again as a throwaway line, I like it that you've got background characters that in this story don't have much to do get named, they get mentioned. I kind of like that. When Riker's like, what can we do? And Worf is like, the Borg have neither honour nor courage. And Riker's like, I hope that's enough. And I'm thinking, yeah. Actually, of all the things to say, it does sound a bit crap, really. I mean, maybe it's just me, I don't know. But I always have the feeling that if you're courageous and honourable and you're fighting an enemy that isn't honourable, then the unhonourable people are going to win. It's a bit like if you get into a fight and you're playing Queensberry rules and somebody decides they're not going to anymore and they kick the other bloke in the gonads, then, the one who did the kicking won.
Makes you think of blanket bombing in the Second World War, doesn't it? Which wasn't a particularly honourable thing to do on our part, but
no, it wasn't.
Arguably was a means to an end, wasn't it?
I just happen to think that the guys who play dirty win. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try and be honourable first, but I think that there comes a point when, as in this case, humanity's survival is at stake. Is there a point when it becomes honourable to use dishonourable methods? I don't know. Anyway, that's where my brain went. Sorry. I'll get back on track now. And then you have a nice exchange between Shelby and Riker. And she isn't annoying this time. No. And it's not that the animosity's gone, it seems more that Riker's now able to handle it, and because he's handling it better, so is she. And then they hear that Starfleet has engaged the Borg at Wolf 359, and then you get a transmission from the Admiral, but it's breaking up, and they're saying it's not going well, and they're attempting to withdraw and regroup, and then it just cuts. It's just like, ooh, that's not good. So they're in the conference room, and they're talking about what they can do. And one of the things that they did think of, Dr. Crusher and Data were talking about it, was destructive nanites. Now, they don't go down that route because it says it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks, and they don't have 2 to 3 weeks. But where did that idea go for the future? Why did they not carry on developing the idea of the destructive nanites? I thought to myself, yeah, okay, you're not going to use it now because it takes too long, but isn't that kind of a cool idea? I thought it could have wiped them out, maybe. But you never hear of it again. Riker goes into the captain's ready room, because of course he is captain now, and Guinan appears in purple. And Riker's like, kind of, what are you doing here? And she's like, I'm used to having the captain's ear. And, she says, did he ever tell you why we were so close? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh well. And you think, oh, we were going to learn something then? Bollocks. But anyway, she says that Riker has to let Picard go because he's in the room and he permeates the ship. And Riker's saying, yeah, but he wrote the book about this ship. And she quite rightly says, well, then it's time to throw the book away because if he knows it, the Borg know it. It's the only way to beat him. And then you get the Enterprise coming across what's effectively a ship graveyard. I mean, they get to Wolf 359. There's just so many ships in bits.
Mixed feelings about this bit, because on the one hand, very good effect shots with the wrecked ships, all sort of sparkling in space, very atmospheric. Yeah. They've turned up and the battle's been lost, effectively. On the one hand. On the other hand, it's like, damn, we missed an almighty space battle. I wanted to see that. Of course, you do get to see it, but not till Deep Space Nine, because it was the pilot. They had the budget to do it, and they just didn't have the budget for it in this. No. Plus, technology for effects had improved by the time they got to the Emissary anyway. But so it's it's partly good and partly slightly disappointing because you wanted to see the battle, but hey-ho.
See, I don't find that, because I think that the disappointment you feel is shared by the Enterprise crew, and therefore on that level it works. Yeah. Yes, you're disappointed, but you don't feel cheated. Yeah. Because you're seeing all of this from the point of view of the Enterprise crew, and they're just as disappointed as anybody else not to have been there, particularly when they name-check the Melbourne. As one of the ships that's floating by, sparking with holes in. And of course that's the one that Riker would have had command of. Yes. And you can't help wondering you can't help wondering, would it have had a different fate had he accepted the command?
Yep.
At least I did. And then they detect some eddies, which may lead to the Borg ship.
I'm thinking little and large. Not that sort of Eddie, huh?
No, nor Eddie the Eagle Edwards, neither. And so Riker says to Shelby, right, we're going to initiate your plan to separate the saucer section. And Shelby's like, but Picard knew about that. And Riker goes, I'm counting on it. And then he calls over Data and Worf, and he's got a special mission for them. And then you've got Riker on the battle bridge. Which
looks far groovier than it ever has before.
It does look cool, doesn't it? Have they?
Yeah, it's because the set was used for some of the original series movies in the in-between time. So they'd altered it anyway.
Right.
Because it's the original Enterprise set, effectively, from the movies.
Okay.
Tweaked, or always has been. So, because it's been tweaked a bit more by them, it's basically by now looking really snazzy indeed. And it's got live monitors, rather than there being stuff added later on via blue screen onto the screens. It's actually what
live,
you see on the screens is
and
there.
Flashing, yeah.
And it always looks a lot better, it has to be said.
It does look really cool. I presumed they just lit it a little bit differently or something, but it's more than that.
No, it's structurally quite different. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And you get Riker talking to Picard, and he's using a very old tactic, which is getting him to talk so we can trace the signal. And then you see Data and Worf with these special bands round their sort of, what do you call it, upper arm?
Upper arm, yeah.
Which
transporter armbands.
Yeah. And so initially you think they're going to transport, but they don't. Then you have that it's separated, and the Borg cube is ignoring the saucer section. The saucer section then fires an antimatter spread. Now, I didn't understand why. Did you understand why?
It was basically to keep distracting Locutus so he wouldn't spot the shuttle, because the shuttle was the important part of the strike.
Yeah.
So rather than just having the one Enterprise to watch with a shuttle flying out, which would have been obvious, they split off into three effectively. And this is kind of it's like those Japanese things, like Starfleet, where the ships split up into smaller ships, but they're still, can be operated independently.
Battle of the Planets now,
or indeed Battle of the Planets, yes, with the Phoenix with all the little ships inside. Yeah. So they're basically going down. I mean, it's a really, really clever way of doing it. Yeah. Very satisfying to watch as well.
Yeah.
But the only unsatisfying thing is the fact that the saucer set is just reused footage. But other than that, it looks cool.
Yeah. So you've got Data and Worf in the shuttle, and they go through the electromagnetic field, because presumably they're small enough to be...
Yeah, they can fly in and
let through. And then they use the shuttle's escape transporters to beam onto the ship. They fire a few phaser shots. Locutus is clear to see, so they're avoiding him going for the ordinary Borg. And then Worf tackles Locutus, and it does look like Locutus is going to use one of his augmented arm things to kill Worf. And he sort of manages to get out, Data! And then Data comes along, and between the two of them, they transport him onto the shuttle. The shuttle then leaves the field, and the electromagnetic field, and O'Brien is on hand to transport them, so he starts transporting them, and the Borg blow up the shuttle, but it's okay because they were prepared for that action, and Locutus and Data and Worf are on the Enterprise, although I have to be honest, I wasn't sure whether they were on the saucer section or the battle bridge at this point, because I don't know where the divide is.
They didn't say. I mean, they could be on either.
Okay, fair enough. The saucer section has now been disabled, so they're all worried that it's going to be a sitting duck, and then suddenly the Borg ship flies off and heads towards Earth. So the Enterprise is in pursuit, and they're having a conversation about... They're on the bridge, and it's Riker and Data, and they're talking... And Crashman, they're talking about how, bearing in mind what they've seen happen before with the Borg, they can't just disconnect Locutus. That might result in his death. So, using some gibberish techno-wank, Data is able to ascertain that the Borg are still controlling Picard. Because they can't cut the link because it might be fatal, Data is going to see if he can access the machine part of Picard, of Locutus. Then they hear that the Borg have entered Earth space, and it's 27 minutes until the Borg reach Earth, but it's 42 minutes until the Enterprise are going to reach the Borg. Then you get some strange thing using the same thing that from Data's lab that Lal was in, but somehow it involves transporters or something.
Yeah, there's something about using the transporters to stop the subspace signal being broken off, or at very least monitoring or something. It's all a MacGuffin, really, to get O'Brien involved, because originally this was going to be Geordie, but unfortunately LeVar Burton was in hospital for most of this episode having emergency surgery.
Ooh.
So the only shots you see of him are individual one-shots, because he wasn't filming with the rest of them, because he was in hospital at the time, and so they got O'Brien in using some jiggery-pokery with the transporters in order for him to deliver some of Geordie's lines, basically.
Okay. Troy is there so that she can determine if Data is reaching Picard the man, as opposed to...
Yep. Everybody gets something to do in this. It's quite nice. So she gets in. Obviously, Dr. Crusher's got quite an important job to do here as well, so they're making good use of all the characters for a change.
Yes. And then they hear that the Borg have got through the Mars defence system. And then
Oh yeah, and the Mars defence system's quite groovy as well. Sorry to get excited about very tiny spaceships, but I was doing some reading about it. So apparently they basically, those little, they look like little torpedoes, don't they? They go hurtling towards the Borg ship and just blow up. I mean, made no difference at all. But the models look really nice. They're actually basically they took a load of submarine kits and kit bashed them, so they're actually like mini submarines coming shooting at the Borg cubes. Really cool.
Do you know what it reminded me of?
What did it remind you of?
The scene in Galaxy Quest where they end up dragging the mines back.
Yeah, right.
And after 3, on the third attempt, Data has access. Suddenly, Locutus jumps to life and tries to escape. And Data restrains him. And, of course, we know that Data has incredible strength. So he ends up pulling off an implant. And suddenly, Troy says she can feel Picard. And then Picard holds Data's hand. And Picard has somehow broken through the Borg technology. And as a result, the Borg have halted. So they've got 2 minutes. So there's this discussion, can Data possibly plant a command into the Borg consciousness? And he's trying things, but it's all very high security and it can't break through. Meanwhile, the cube is over Earth and it's attempting to track her on the Enterprise, and it does lock on. Despite all the rotating frequencies, the shields fail. So then Riker's saying, right, we've got to set a collision course with the Borg cube, and Wesley Crusher's like, sir? And as you said, it was like, I've never shagged a woman. I'm
never gonna get it.
No. But Riker's like, yes. And then suddenly Picard says, sleep. And then he says it again. And Crusher's like, oh, he's exhausted. And then Data spends fucking ages effectively saying, no, he's not, it's a command. But he has this really unnecessarily long sentence, which, given that they've only got 2 fucking minutes, he could have been a bit bloody shorter. Because basically, it's a suggested command. And the command to regenerate it is not as protected. So Data is able to enter it into the system, and suddenly it all stops. So Riker says to Shelby to take an away team to the cube to confirm, which they do, but because when Worf takes tricorder readings, everything's really fluctuating, they're concerned that it might be a self-destruct sequence. And they're going, oh, should we stop it? Because what about the captain? And what can we learn from the Borg? And Riker is really decisive. He's like, no, if they're going to destroy themselves, let's do it. Get away now. Away team, beam away, and the cube blows up. And when it blows up, the captain shudders, but is otherwise okay. Makes some really, this dialogue's awful, really crap line about, oh, I'm almost human, I've just got a bit of a headache. And it could have been so much, the dialogue's terrible, Lucas style, cheesy. Really. George Lucas wrote that bit. And also, why is he hardly wearing anything? He's got cyber pants on, hasn't he?
Yes, I think the idea is they've started to try and remove the implants, hence he's stripped down to the bits that they couldn't remove, basically.
Okay. I didn't like the cyber pants anyway.
Cyber pants.
Yeah, bad.
Delete. Oh no!
Yeah, didn't like the cyber pants.
They're the bit of cyber technology that's even worse than the cyber mats.
Yeah, the cyber pants. Yeah. And then you get this scene where it's obviously a bit later, and Picard's got these funny things stuck to his head, but otherwise looks fairly normal and is in his uniform. And someone wants to come in, and both he and Riker go, enter or okay or whatever, because Riker's adjusting to not being captain anymore. And you get this stuff where Riker's basically saying his career plans are his own business, and they're going to have a refit for 5 to 6 weeks. And it all seems a remarkably normal conversation. And then when everyone's gone, Picard goes to sip his tea Earl Grey hot, and then he just suddenly looks really pained and bereft, and he can't actually drink his tea, and then he just turns and faces outward to look at the starfield. And that's it, end of episode.
So what do we think?
I think this is actually better than part 1.
I'm not sure I'd go quite that far, but certainly this is the best second part of a Star Trek two-parter, I think. So often the part 2 was a massive, massive anticlimax. Yeah. This one is very clever. As I say, everybody gets utilised. There's a lot visually going on. Even though you miss out on the space battle, there is still the battle between the Enterprise and the Borg cube. But there's also quite a bit of character turmoil and stuff. It's just really good.
I think it's really good. I think for me, the reason this is better than part 1 is because I feel the tension more in part 2 than part 1. In that the tension is up there for almost the entire way through part 2, whereas it takes a little while to build in part 1.
Yes, you're right. That's true. So it's more tense for more of it.
Yes, and also you get the whole Shelby Riker thing, which in part 1, to be honest, I find a bit annoying, and it's sort of there-ish in part 2, but A, not as much because obviously he's got over it, but B, other stuff in the story takes precedent. And it's one of those things that I just think they should have done a bit less of it, really, in part 1. Whereas I don't have the same issue with you with the lack of space battle, because I think you're meant to feel the disappointment because the Enterprise crew do, because they want to be there. The only thing for me, really, well, two things that I don't like in part 2 are the Lucas dialogue.
At the end.
And you've still got very static space battles. They're still very 2D. They're still not...
They're slow. I wouldn't say they're 2D, but they're slow. Everything seems to happen through gravy. It's like...
Yeah, but it's not just... When I say 2D, I mean there's just not... This is space. It should be more dynamic, I suppose is what I'm saying. It should be a lot more dynamic than it is.
Right.
And maybe part of it is the technology of the time, but I do think
the budget involved,
but I do think at least some of it is actually the imagination of the time, that they hadn't quite caught on to the fact that, hang on, this is space and you could be moving around more. It just hits me, basically, particularly in this one. I think possibly because of the heightened ratcheted tension, you're expecting more, even though there's only the two ships, the Enterprise and the Borg cube. I was expecting more than I actually saw on the screen. But those are the only two things I have to say against this episode, which I think is otherwise perfect, whereas the Riker Shelby stuff took up a large chunk of part 1. So I'm rating part 2 better than the Defector, and also if you take it as an entire episode, I rate it more than the Defector.
All right. I still wouldn't go that far. I still prefer the Defector, actually, but there we go. But no, it's just good stuff. One of the little things that struck me this time was the screen in the Borg cube that Locutus is looking at when he's viewing what the Enterprise is doing. It's a nice effect. It's very different from the screens we get on Federation ships. So it was a nice little detail thing. This is the last time we'll get to see a Saucer Sep until Generations, believe it or not. You're very curious. They got this really good idea, and they never seem to utilise it, possibly because of budgetary reasons.
Could be.
But yeah, generally the main thing is it's a good payoff for part 1. You don't feel cheated by it, which so often you do. Apparently, tension was so high that somebody passed off a fake script. People actually swallowed that it might be true because they were so desperate to know what might happen.
Gosh.
It was somewhat different to the final version, needless to say. But it's curious that that sort of thing happens a lot nowadays. So as soon as something's met, like the new Star Wars film, for instance, already there'll be multiple scripts online for that, and multiple rumours of people with insiders knowing what's going, all that crap, But of course, back in the days of Best of Both Worlds, stuff like that was just beginning. So it was a bit more unique. Michael Pyler, when he sat down to write part 2, didn't actually know how he was going to sort out the conclusion of part 1, and really it was right towards the end of writing the script he realised how he was going to tie it all up with basically that line Beverly has about their Achilles heel being their interconnectedness, and that's basically what they play on. Yeah, but good stuff. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
a lot more than I remembered enjoying it the first time, to be honest, so there you go. So we need to hear what Mr. Pieman, Mr. Murray, thinks of this, so let's hear his feedback.
Hello again, Orgs. It's Murray Christensen, or Pieman, whichever you prefer. Just obviously giving feedback for Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Could hardly leave it to cliffhanger up Part 1. So Part 2, many two-parters often don't manage to really measure up in the second part. Quite often the writers have written themselves into a corner, they can't quite work out what to do next, and the second part is always a wee bit of a letdown after what's usually an exciting first part where everything changes and it all goes wrong. I'm happy to say this is not the case with the Best of Both Worlds Part 2. It's still a fantastic episode, very much complements it. Actually, looking at the episodes now, while I always used to consider Part 1 a Picard episode, you are indeed correct that Part 1 is more Riker's episode, so thanks for that different angle on things. But this is also very much Riker's episode. Riker now commanding the Enterprise. It's nice to see the Enterprise suitably knackered from its chasing the Borg and firing the big deflector dish, which of course fails spectacularly. And also nice that the Borg don't destroy the Enterprise, they just leave it. It's no longer a threat. Why would they bother? Very Borg-like. So we have the Enterprise recovering and promising to meet the fleet at Wolf 359. Well, we know how Wolf 359 turns out, as we see later in the fantastic sequence of the wrecked starship, the starship's graveyard, the aftermath of the battle, with wrecked starships lying all over it. It's a really good sense of devastation. I think the Black Dog Boy mentioned something similar last week, and it's an excellent scene of devastation and sort of the true horror of how much the Federation has been hit by this attack. So obviously the rest of the episode is basically a chase and search for a solution. I quite like Riker's we get to see how good Riker is, how well he can adapt and plan, and the way he adapts to the plan that Shelby told Picard to do something different is quite good. I actually thought the effects in this bit were quite nice as well, particularly more so for the time, but the shots of the shuttle flying through the tractor beams and the antimatter spread is all rather lovely, and that's the daring rescue of Picard, or Locutus as it is in this case, and then as the Borg advances towards Earth, Borg ship advances towards Earth again, which is very well done. Although we don't see much of the planetary security, it's nice to see something different, and obviously the only real, I don't mean to call it a downside, it's a little disappointing that at the end it's the sleep command. I do quite like Riker's standby for what, when Data finds out what he's doing. It is just as he's about to call the ramming order to try and sacrifice the ship to defeat the Borg. Is really quite well done. And actually on that scene when he says prepare for warp speed ramming speed kind of thing, the look on Wesley's face is quite good. It does have a bit of a I've never felt the touch of a woman about it, which is quite a nice touch. I think quite a nice bit of acting from Will Wheaton. So overall, yes, I'd actually say at least as good, probably actually as good as the last episode, and a very good start to the season. How the episodes work as a whole, I suppose a two-parter's always got a bit of an advantage over a single episode because it's got more time to develop and work things out. As I said last week, this actually doesn't work as well as a TV movie. It's not. Just the cliffhanger seems a bit false, but then that's how it was designed. So overall, yes, a very, very good episode. Probably one of the better two-parters ever done. As I say, most other ones have a letdown at the end, and it's nice that this one doesn't. So I shall talk to you both soon regarding what is really the third part of this episode. See you shortly. Bye.
So we seem to be very much like-minded on this, which is good. I like the idea of the Enterprise being knackered from the battle. And, on the same mind of us when it comes to Wesley as well. Yes. Poor Wesley. But yes, they were very amusing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And you're very right. We've got part 3 next, effectively, with family.
It is. Yeah.
That sort of ending to part 2 with Picard looking wistfully
pained. You
pained
don't know what
out
really.
into the window really pays off.
Yeah.
I think if they'd just left it at that and then gone to a completely different adventure next, that would have seemed like a bad ending.
It would have done.
But actually, that ending to part 2 pays off in family.
It does.
We better watch Family, hadn't we?
We had.
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation, Picard faces his most difficult mission, the long journey home.
Seems to have made a rather disturbing discovery.
Family reunion takes a twisted turn,
What the devil happened to you up there?
turning brothers into bitter rivals.
I even enjoy bullying you.
A tragic homecoming on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay, well, we got Trailer Guy back again, obviously.
Yeah. Did he go on holiday?
I don't know, maybe they just didn't trust him with Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
Maybe he had laryngitis and couldn't record.
I don't know. There we are. He's back now, which is the important thing. Family. So Enterprise is at McKinley Station.
Which looks
undergoing
like it's
repairs.
made out of Lego.
It don't look good. It's not the best effect ever, sadly, no. We've got Commander Riker. So he's had a demotion.
Yeah, but it was a battlefield commission. So the moment the captain comes back, of course he goes back to commander. It was never a full commission.
Well, that just seems a bit odd, really, to me, but there we go. I mean, you could argue that his ship's been blown up, so therefore that could be a reason why he's lost a pip. I don't know. Weird. Worf's parents are coming on board, which Worf isn't very happy about.
No.
And then we cut to Picard and Troy, and Picard is telling her about being off, he's going home to France. And basically she cross-examines him, which seems a bit harsh considering what he's just been through.
Yeah.
To no good reason either. Because
she just needs a slap.
Yeah, I'm afraid. As much as I'm normally quite a fan of Troy, she's just irritating.
No, she just
in this
needs a
scene.
slap.
Well, there we are.
I did like the fact that very early on, when Riker and Worf are talking, you get the callback to Sins of the Father.
Yes.
Which straight away got... going around my head again. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. But I liked it because for a show that's supposedly not got much continuity, it isn't just that in this episode you've got the callback to the immediately preceding episodes. You've also got a callback further back, if you see what I mean. I like that.
Miles Edward O'Brien gets his full name as he gets to meet Worf's dad.
Let me take you to...
Always good to meet another Chief Petty Officer. Sergei Rozhenko, formerly of the USS Intrepid.
Miles Edward O'Brien, sir. Good to meet you.
Don't call me sir. I used to work for a living.
He's joking. The proudest moment of his life was when Worf earned his commission.
Can you imagine an old enlisted man like me raising a boy to be an officer?
It turns out they're both non-commissioned officers, although this doesn't stand up when you look at Miles' uniform because he's Lieutenant Junior grade, apparently. But he's not, because he's Chief Petty Officer, which isn't an officer, so it's all a bit confusing, really. Later on, he gets his own proper pip, but not yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, it might be the fact that he's the transporter chief and therefore it's an honorific.
Literally,
it's just a mess up, isn't it?
It's just a mess up.
Okay.
They just saw him as an extra bod and didn't decide that he was going to be an NCO until this story, basically.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So there we go. Worf's mum makes the point that they've come to see the ship, not Worf, because Worf's dad is like...
You mean Worf, not the ship?
Yes, because Worf's dad's like my dad with steam trains, basically.
Yeah.
He's going constantly telling people he's got all the specs. He's clearly very excited, bless him. Now we cut to Picard in France, and we have some irritating Allo Allo music, basically. Very comfortable and natural with his nephew, who he meets on the way, despite the fact that he's not supposed to be good with children. He's very good with his nephew.
Yeah, who's annoying, but I did wonder whether he would be less annoying with a better haircut.
The haircut isn't great, but I don't know why you find him annoying. It's quite sweet.
I think it's probably mostly the haircut, actually.
Okay.
Reminding me of Battlestar Galactica before the reboot.
Oh,
Whatever
right.
it was, who had the bloody...
Boxy and...
Yes.
Yes, Muffet.
Boxy. It was a boxy haircut.
Yeah, he does look like Boxy, yes. But he's definitely nowhere near as irritating
No,
as
but I
Boxy.
think that's why I found him annoying, as I saw the hair, and that's where my
There's
my
a nice
main
bit
one.
where you're sort of filled in already on the fact that Picard's relationship with his brother isn't good by
No,
the...
that is funny.
Yeah.
Arrow, go,
Yeah.
good son of a... Yeah, like
And
that.
the actor playing Robert is very good value. He's really good. He's got a wonderful character-filled face. And he can
Yes.
do the lift one eyebrow thing as well, which I'm always very jealous of. Always want to be able to do that. Meanwhile, Crusher and Troy having a natter, but Jack Crusher's possessions arrive, including a message for Wes. Then we got a bit with Worf. His embarrassment tour has reached engineering. And as Worf goes off with his mam, his dad has got a personal question to ask Geordie about Worf. Then we introduced this character called Lewis, who's some sort of ocean floor explorer chappie. He wants to get in touch with Picard about his project. Also, the mayor wants to give Picard a parade, which he's not happy with the idea of. It's revealed that Robert is rather anti-technology, to say the least. And he also doesn't want his son getting involved in the idea of becoming a starship captain. Lewis tries to persuade Picard to join his project, and Picard actually seems to be considering it. Worf wants his parents to be more reserved. Aww. And Guinan gets involved. And
she basically says, why did you never give him prune juice?
Yeah.
And they're like, but he always wanted Klingon stuff, so I
Yeah.
learned to make roqueg blood pie.
and all the rest of it, yes. Picard's thinking of becoming the Atlantis director. And Lewis pops by and he's set up a meeting with project governors. It all seems to be moving a bit fast for Picard, but he's kind of talked into it.
Yeah.
Crusher hands over the message to Wes. And then we got Worf in his crazy chair.
Yeah, he's a bit
What
mental,
is it with the
isn't
crazy chair of Worf? It's all sort of... I remember it cropping up later on as well. It's all weird. It's
It
very...
really is
it's like
odd.
something from The Prisoner, isn't it?
Oh, very, very strange.
And his parents pop in and he's happy they're visited, which is rather sweet, but they've heard about the discommendation. He says, well, I must bear the dishonour alone, but his parents say, no, we're family, we share this sort of thing, so that's very sweet.
Yeah.
Robert warns his brother about getting out of control on wine, because he's drinking the real stuff rather than Synthahol.
Yeah.
And then says he would rather like to see him out of control, actually, and asks what happened to him. Picard says he's tired of fighting with him.
So then they have a fight.
They have a fight, but Robert says that he was always jealous of him. He was the elder brother, but Picard was the one that got all the glory. And it sort of ties in, actually, quite nicely to Best of Both Worlds Part 2, where the Admiral's talking about Picard winning athletics awards. Well, that comes up in this one as well. And yeah, they end up in a mud fight.
Yeah, it's quite fun.
Which then ends in laughter, which then ends in tears. It's like covering the whole spectrum of emotions here. Picard reflects is probably too weak a word, on the way in which the Borg used him effectively to kill, and it's effectively a rape. And Robert says, well, my brother is a human being after all. And then we cut to them singing rather jollily.
What happened here?
It's entirely my fault, Mary.
Yes, I fell down, and then he fell down, and then
we both fell down.
We both
Together.
But we both fell down together. Yeah.
Have you two been fighting?
Fighting? No, certainly not. No.
Shame on you both.
I just love that scene.
Yeah, it's good.
We cut to the holodeck where Wesley's entering and gets a message from Jack, who's annoyingly good looking. He's got that cheesy, chiseled features. But Will Wheaton does a really good job of acting that scene out, I think. Very impressed by that. We have goodbyes to the Picard family, because Jean-Luc has realised that his place is on the Enterprise, and it's kind of his brother that's made him realise that. And then we have goodbyes to Worf's family. And we're left with Renee sort of the nephew dreaming about being a starship captain. So it's all very sweet. The thing that really struck me was this. I remembered how good the Picard plot is, but I hadn't remembered much about the Worf subplot and just how sweet that is, actually.
It is.
And that really struck me this time around. It was almost eclipsed the rest of it. The Wesley stuff is just too short, really, to have much of an impact. And to say Jack Crusher is just, puts me off. But there we go. He's got
I don't know, Jack Crusher doesn't bother me as much as Robert does initially. Well, he's wearing an ascot. That's never going to endear him to me.
Right.
Okay? And then when he goes on about the way things used to be, it just reminds me of that other guy who pretends to be British but is actually French. Farage, in charge of UKIP.
Right.
And it was just like I wanted to slap him.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like, bloody hell, no wonder Picard doesn't like you. So, yeah no, he is...
It did remind me slightly of my dad, the old ways being the best and stuff. Yeah, it's like,
On the other hand, as somebody who was forever being eclipsed by her younger sister, I can understand.
Yeah, no, when once the scene sort of plays itself out with him, he admits to being jealous of... Yeah, that then you kind of understand the character. I mean, the episode's very short, but you feel you've got to know him really well by the end of it, which is really good.
And also, I think this episode tackled the whole issue of technology de-skilling people in a much better way than a lot of other episodes do. Because they're sitting around, they're appreciating proper alcohol, as opposed to synthahol. They are appreciating good home cooking rather than replicated food. And it's like, because it's small scale and the little touches, although I don't agree that with Robert that technology is bad, I found those sort of arguments much more convincing than the sort of crap you get in Insurrection. For me, technology is a tool, and sometimes you want to have it, and sometimes maybe you don't. And in other words, you don't necessarily have an uncritical attitude towards it. And I thought that this episode discussed that issue much better than many other episodes, either of Star Trek or of anything else.
Right. The lad who plays Rene, David Tristram Birkin, will go on to play the child Picard in Rascals. Ooh, yes, I know that's not what I'm looking forward to. But
terrible!
There was originally going to be some sci-fi MacGuffin about crew disappearing, because what happened was when the episode was proposed, the producer said, that's fine, but it needs to be sci-fi. Can't just have family stuff. Thankfully, we ended up with family stuff, and it really makes the episode stand out. And
I suppose the sci-fi is the Atlantis Project.
Just about, but you don't really see anything, do you?
No,
Whereas originally there were going to be crew members disappearing and stuff, which actually plays out. They use that plot later on in Remember Me. So we'll be seeing that in a month or so's time. And instead they went with the human family drama, which was definitely the right decision to make and worked really well.
What was with the mobile phone mast with the French flag on?
Yeah, the matte painting. There's a curious mast thing on it. Yeah, doesn't work really very well, but never mind. And the actual thing was filmed in California, so obviously there.
It didn't look very French.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, okay, fair enough. It's the 24th century.
Yeah.
But the house was mock Tudor.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It might have been something that was designed to look French, but you could tell it wasn't historic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it did actually look American, because American is fake historic in most cases.
But I mean, the episode performs a very important role in basically giving, that element of recuperation to Picard and recognising what he's been through, rather than just carrying straight on. It's obviously something that more prevalent in Deep Space Nine in terms of people's families and their relationships and stuff get referenced a lot more, but Next Generation does it from time to time, and it does it really well here.
Yeah, it does.
So there we go. Shall we find out what Mr. Pieman thought?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello again, Orgs. This is obviously the feedback for Family. Again, another very good episode. Quite powerful in some places. A bit of a sort of quiet coda to the last two-parter. Again, nice to see things carry on. The Enterprise did take an absolute drubbing in the fight, and it is nice to see that it's got to sit in Earth Station McKinley. Lovely, actually. graphic of the Enterprise with the big sort of claw-like dry dock around it. And yes, the Enterprise has to put in for repairs, and everyone has basically got to wait around and see what happens. And so they spend time with their families, as quite a lot of them seem to have family on Earth. We get to see the main meat of the episode is Picard and his conflict with his brother and the family vineyard, the fact that his brothers, the sort of disagreements they've had over time. It's all very well done, but as you would expect from Patrick Stewart, and ultimately the scene where Picard breaks down over the trauma of his conversion into Locutus and what he feels responsible for is really well done. Fantastic stuff, and really nice that they addressed it, and nice that there wasn't this, what I'm now beginning to think of as the mythical Next Generation reset button. We'll see as we go on, but it's seeming less and less like something that actually happens. But yes, Picard and his brother sort out their differences, and Picard maybe feels a bit better about his ordeal. It's actually nice, the idea that he was thinking of quitting after the whole thing, which would have been an interesting direction the series could have taken, with Picard actually not leaving at the end of the Best of Both Worlds, but actually leaving just shortly afterwards. Glad they didn't, though. We also, of course, have Worf meeting his family. That's a nice little subplot, and even actually the subplot with Wesley getting the holo message from his dad is rather nice. I'm using nice a lot, terrible language. And yes, it's just rather well done overall. Nice to see a sort of calm reflection on the previous two parts, and just generally an episode filled with character moments, particularly after the action and danger of the last two episodes. So overall, yes, I do agree that this sort of fits in actually really as a 3-part episode, or at least 2 parts and an epilogue. It's very well done, and while I usually have claimed season 3 is the best season, I'm actually looking forward to possibly being proven wrong and having season 4. It's definitely off to a very, very strong start. So, as always, keep up the good work. I'm enjoying the podcast, and I will see you next time for the next 2 episodes. Bye!
Bye!
Yeah, can't disagree much with that, although obviously was more impressed with the McKinley effect than we were. But
yeah, I just thought Lego. Sorry.
Didn't look right, but there we go. Jolly good.
It wasn't as bad as Picard's shirt.
Right. Didn't bother me particularly, but there we go.
Well,
the green one.
No, it was sort of beige with brown rectangles on. I'm not really a fan of beige, and it was too low cut as well.
Showing off some of his chestage. Right.
Well, it wasn't so much that it was showing off some of his chestage. The way it was cut, it looked as though he ought to have worn a medallion, and that's never good. So that must be a bad shirt design.
All right. Okay, well, so next time, as season 4 continues, we'll be recording on Wednesday the 6th, and we'll be looking at the episode Brothers, which is a Noonien Soon and Lore episode, which is, it's interesting that family doesn't feature Data at all.
No.
Whereas Brothers very much features his family, such as it is, and Suddenly Human, about which I remember very, very little. But there we go.
No, me neither.
We shall see if they're any good next time. If you'd like to send some feedback either on this time's episodes or for the episodes for next time, you can contact us on the Geek Planet online forums. I'm Rev_org on Twitter.
And I'm Ammo_purple.
We have our Tumblr site, bOrgCast.tumblr.com. And you can contact us via email on revpeterorgan@yahoo.co.uk. So we'll catch you next month.
Yes.
Cheerio, bye.
Bye. The bOrgCast is brought to you by those lovely purple people at Geek Planet Online. The song at the opening of this podcast was written and performed by Adam Buxton and is used with his kind permission.